Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm really glad to see so many people here to meet with us about this really important topic. My name is Carrie Lang. I'm the Director of Health Services here in the Bellevue School District. We gave a talk about this last week at Sammamish High. It's a really important topic for parents and young people to know about, as it is something that they might be encountering, and we want to be able to give you guys the information that you need to help you all stay safe. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking a little bit about kind of the medical effects. I'm a nurse, and so I'm going to talk about what opioids are and how they affect our bodies. Tori Markham, Health Curriculum Developer in the Bellevue School District, she's going to talk a little bit about what we're teaching students in the schools. Jim Keene, our narcotics detective for the Bellevue Police Department, he's going to be coming up and talking about what they've been seeing in the community. Kristen Nicholson and Ellen Ngo are Youth Eastside Services representatives, and they are going to be speaking about the mental health impacts and what they're doing to support kids here in the schools. Olga Davidov, she's a mom whose son recently passed away due to overdose, and she and another parent whose kids were affected are going to be speaking as well. And at the end, we've got Marlis McConnell. She's going to be with me here outside at the table. She has brought samples of narcan, which I'll be talking about, which is a drug that reverses the effects of opioids. She's going to be demoing that, and I'm going to be demoing a product that you can use to dispose of any leftover medications you have in your cabinet. So we'll go ahead and get started. And at the end of that, we'll have half an hour for you guys to have questions. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about opioids. Opioids are a class of drugs that are mostly prescribed to treat pain. You might see common ones like morphine, oxycodone, Vicodin. Those are ones you might have heard of. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. And then the illegal opioid you may have heard of is heroin. And they're all the same class. Opioid receptors in the body, they attach to receptors in the brain and in the spinal column. In the brain, they can modulate pain perception, emotion, and the reward and pleasure centers in the brain. In the brain stem, they modulate breathing and they slow it when they're in your been uptaken by those receptors in your brain and make a feeling of relaxation. And then in the spinal cord, they reduce transmissions of pain signals from the body, and that's why they're prescribed as a pain medication. Fentanyl, it's a synthetic opioid, most commonly prescribed to treat severe pain, such as cancer pain. It is many times more powerful than the other opioids that I've talked about. And most cases of recent fentanyl-related overdoses are due to illegally made fentanyl. So it's not the stuff that they are making and getting in the hospitals. It is illegally made and distributed. These are some pictures here of where fentanyl has been found locally, the synthetic or the counterfeit pills. When the detective comes up, he'll have some more pictures of some of the drugs that they've been finding fentanyl in here locally and across the nation. What can we do to prevent overdose from a medication safety perspective? If you have a prescription for an opioid pain medicine, you want to keep it out of reach. You want to make sure you lock it up so that children and students can't get access to it. Keep count of your pills so that you know whether anybody is taking them in your household. And then dispose of any medications you no longer need. Don't just keep them around in your medicine cabinet. There's a couple of ways you can dispose of them. If you go to takebackyourmeds.org, it will list some facilities that will take prescription medications that you no longer need. You can also use a substance called Dispose RX. It's relatively new, and I'll be demoing that outside at the end. And I have some samples for if some of you want to take a sample home to use with any prescription opioids that you might have at your home. And talking with your student about all the things you learned tonight. And our partners from Youth Eastside Services will be talking more about what you want to do to open those lines of communication with your children. Signs of overdose for opioids. I think it's important that we know what these are so we know how to respond and we know what we're seeing. Somebody who's overdosed on an opioid, they won't wake up, okay? They may have cold and clammy skin. Their breathing will be slow or stopped, and if they are breathing, it'll be a gurgling or snoring kind of sound. Their pupils will be very small, also called pinpoint pupils. At the center of their eye will be very shrunken, and their lips and nails will be blue or dusky colored. What can you do if you see somebody who is having an overdose? There is a medication called naloxone, whose brand name is called Narcan. It's available in Washington State without a prescription. So you can go into a pharmacy and ask for Narcan or naloxone, and they will give it to you. What it does is it blocks those receptors and restores that normal breathing pattern so that the person can then receive supportive care from 911 and not pass away. It's harmless if it's given to somebody who's not overdosing on an opioid. So if you find somebody who you suspect may be using opioids, however you are concerned that it might be an alcohol overdose, and you give it to them, it won't hurt them. It just won't reverse the effects of an alcohol overdose, only the opioids. If somebody is dependent on an opioid, it can trigger withdrawal symptoms. So keep that in mind. You can find out which pharmacies will have stock in Narcan for you to be able to go pick some up. If you go to stopoverdose.org, put in your zip code and it'll show the local pharmacies. I recommend calling them first because they don't always have enough in stock. They can order it for you and you can go pick it up. Prices range I got mine for $20. I have heard reports of it being sold for $175. It may be that they can bill your insurance for it, and that might be why it's lower in some places. Marlis will have a few samples to give away here at the end. So if you'd like to see how it works, Marlis will be demoing how it can be administered, and then she has a few samples. Please call 911 after giving Narcan because it can be metabolized by the body more quickly than the opioids are. So what might happen is a person comes out of their overdose, is feeling better, and then falls back into it as the Narcan is metabolized by the body. Okay. That's the end of my presentation for now. Now I'm going to have Tori Markham come up from the Bellevue School District. She's going to talk about what we're teaching kids in schools about this topic.
Hi, thanks all for coming tonight. So in health class, our students take health in 5th grade, 7th grade, and 10th grade for the most part. We do incorporate a little bit into the 3rd and 4th grade, but for the most part, here's what you see as far as what our outcomes, our learning outcomes for drug and alcohol use are. Mostly in elementary, we really focus on what medication and other drugs look like, kind of the differences between over-the-counter medication, prescription medication, who takes the medication, and really focusing on refusal skills. In elementary and middle school, we really focus on preventative. So where it comes from, the spheres of influence. As we go on to middle school, we go into actual prescription drug safety. We have a program called EverFi that we team up with, and they have an online platform, module style system that our kids go through and on prescription drug safety. And we also watch a video, it's from MTV, and it's focused on Macklemore. Sorry, I had to think about that. Macklemore does a prescription for change, and it's a really powerful video based out of Seattle, and he goes to a recovery center in downtown Seattle. And so he's just talking about his challenges and how he deals with society. He interviewed Barack Obama, and so kids start to get a flavor of the societal issues around the opioid crisis. Also in middle school, we really focus on the brain, the teenage brain, and the impact on different sorts of drugs. They do a drug research project, and they kind of share what their findings were within that as well. And societal and personal challenges that sometimes people go through. So starting to depict some of those stigmas behind who uses drugs and who doesn't. Sometimes they often think about the drug users as kind of these friendly people who live on the streets all the time, when in fact they are a lot of the people who they sit with next to in class, or moms, or dads. So these are average, normal people. In high school, we kind of get into the implications of how genetics play a role in drug use, even sometimes medical disorders, and how that might influence the amount of drugs you take or the dependency on certain drugs. The environment that you're in, and sometimes how the recovery efforts make it difficult if you're in an environment that's you're around drugs all the time, it's a lot harder to kick the habit. If you're around friends or family members who are also taking drugs, it's really hard to just say no or to not be around it. And of course, the choices and what kind of choices they make, focusing on goals, stress relief, coping mechanisms, focusing on things that proactive and preventative at that stage as well, on why might they start taking drugs in the first place. So with the opioids and the fentanyl, they access the validity of information. If they Google something, they're going to find a slew of information. So really trying to direct them to the right information and focusing on community resources that can help everybody out, either with information or recovery, addiction, support systems for people who, if their friends or family are using drugs, that they can also get support if they're the friends or family members. And then we also watch a video in high school called Chasing Heroin. It's also Seattle-based and focused on downtown Seattle, and talks about personal stories. So we really focus on that personalized effect of, in Chasing Heroin, there's a mom who is a PTSA mom and happened to get pain medication when she had a surgery. And so her story of how that pain medication really led to a narcotic addiction. So just kind of talking about the societal issues like that. So, thank you.
Before I pass along to our detective from the police department, I just want to thank the members of our Bellevue community who've come out here to support. Deputy Superintendent Eden Collins is here. Director of Counseling, Deb Kraft, is here. I see Beck Anderson, principal here at Bellevue High, is here. I appreciate our Bellevue Police and Fire for coming out and supporting us in this. It's really important to feel so supported by everybody in this really important topic. I'll click right here. What's wrong? All right, so now we have Detective Keene.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. I know Game 7 is on right now, but this is very important information. I have two kids myself, 11 and 9, and this is kind of a scary thing. So it's great that you're here because this is very important information. I've been with the Bellevue Police Department for 14 years now. The last 7 I've been in our Special Operations Group. In that division, we target the most high impact repeat offenders in property crimes, in human trafficking, and of course in narcotic distribution. And every time I tell somebody that I work for the city of Bellevue, I always get the same response: hey, that's a really safe place to be. And I go, yeah, it is safe, but I also tell them we get all of the same crimes that any big city does. We just get them in smaller numbers. And the same is true with the problem of fentanyl. All the problems that you've heard happening in the bigger cities, we already have them here in Bellevue. So it started out that fentanyl, find the laser here, was only cut into heroin. It's an opioid like heroin. It was cut into heroin to make it feel more potent. But in the last 2 years, my unit, we've either purchased or seized during search warrants meth. This is some crystal meth down here, cut with fentanyl, cocaine, cut with fentanyl, and even just recently I got some ecstasy that was cut with fentanyl. Now, I know what you parents might be thinking right now. You might be going, well, there's no way my baby would ever try anything like meth or heroin or cocaine, and you may be right. But what about pills? I'm talking prescription pills, pills that many of you probably have in your cabinets at home right now. Oxycodone, we already heard, is being counterfeited and laced with fentanyl. And that's probably the most prolific pill that we have right now. Those blue M30s right here. Just this weekend, we had 2 overdoses where these pills were at that scene. Last year, we did a case on a guy that was pressing thousands and thousands and thousands of these pills. Xanax is the next most popular one. That's the one that's kind of up and coming right now. We're seeing a lot of Xanax bars that are pressed with fentanyl. And across the rest of the country, we're seeing Ritalin and Adderall. So just about any legal pill that you can think of is now being counterfeited and laced with fentanyl. But you might have heard that fake pills are really easy to identify, right? So here's what some fake pills look like. The one on top, this A215, that's a legit, real A215, an oxycodone pill. And this one down here is a fake pill. And what you can see is like fake pills usually have jagged edges, they crumble really easily, their color is usually off, and their imprint is usually pretty bad. It's like this Xanax bar down here. This is a real Xanax bar on top. This is a fake one here. You can see how the imprint there is really kind of imprecise and uneven. And the biggest thing is they never have these like the clear, shiny coating, the protective coating on them that keeps them from dissolving. So that's what fake pills look like. So you're here at school, so you got to get a quiz. So now that you know how to identify fake pills, out of these two groups of Xanax bars, which one do you think are the fentanyl-laced fake pills? Any idea? B, I hear some B's out there. Well, let's look at them together, okay? So both groups, they look like they have pretty smooth edges. Both groups, it looks like the imprint is really precise and even on both. And if you can, I don't know if you can see from where you're sitting, but they even got like the shiny coating. If you can see on the edges, it's kind of glowing a little bit. Well, I kind of tricked you. They're all fake. Those are all fake fentanyl pills, Xanax bars. If you put that next to a real Xanax bar, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. And what's really, really scary about this is these pills are being counterfeited and produced by like large drug organizations, cartels and things like that. So they're making these commercial grade quality pills now, but they don't mix them commercial grade, okay? The mix can be all off and wacky. So you can take one of these pills, and this is what happens at parties. Kids do this at parties all the time, is they'll get Xanax bars and they'll break them at these break lines and pass the pieces around, or they'll sell the pieces. Well, I could take that piece, and you could take that piece, and you could take that piece, and then we give this other piece to somebody else, and that's the piece that has all the fentanyl in it. And that person ODs and dies almost immediately. So it's a really scary thing. Kids can get in a party and see people taking these pills and go, oh, look, the pills are okay. They're okay. I'm going to take one too. And then they get the hot load. Okay? It used to be that a guy would order a pill press over the dark web, and he'd order his fentanyl over the dark web, and he'd sit in his living room and he'd press these pills, and then you'd get these quality pills like this that are really easy to tell. That's not the case anymore. They're commercial grade pills now. It's very scary. So a lot of times, I remember when I was in high school, I kind of thought I was invincible. I kind of thought nothing was really a big deal. And that's pretty easy for kids to think that about pills that are getting passed around parties, especially when they think that they're like my buddy's prescription pills. Well, here are the laws that my partner and I in our narcotics unit have used over the last 2 years when we actually file charges in these cases. So this first one up here, Legend Drugs, this has to do with prescription pills. So if I have a prescription and I sell you a Xanax bar for my prescription, that's a Class B felony, 10 years in prison, and $20,000 fine, okay? So I just sold you that pill, and now let's say that pill wasn't a real pill, it had fentanyl in it, and the cops catch you with that fentanyl pill that you bought from your friend. Now you're under this law right here, which is the same as selling and buying heroin or meth or anything else. Again, that's a Class B felony, 10 years in prison, and a $20,000 fine. Now, if I take that Xanax bar that I bought from my friend that I thought was legit, but it had fentanyl in it, and we go to a party and I break it up, and I start selling the parts or handing them out to my friends, and one of my friends dies from that pill, then it's controlled substance homicide. Okay, 10 years in prison, it's a Class B felony again, 10 years in prison, $20,000 fine. So while we might think that like these are just kids having fun and kind of goofing off, these are really, really serious crimes and have really serious repercussions. So what's the message of all this? Parents, the message for you tonight is that times have changed. Once long ago, maybe it was kind of okay to say, oh, my kids are just kind of having fun and figuring out life, and I'm watching over them. As long as they don't get addicted, everything will be okay. I grew up in the DARE era, where everything was about keeping kids off drugs to fight addiction, because addiction ruins lives, and of course that's still true. But today, that message has changed. It's so much more dangerous. I'm not even worried about addiction anymore. I'm worried about one pill. The first pill that you take at a party is death. I'm worried about one joint is death. That's right. Even marijuana is being laced with fentanyl now. So we can go around and around about if marijuana is good or bad, gateway drug or not or whatever, but there's still black market marijuana out there, and I'm telling you, it's as alive as it ever was even before we legalized it, and now they're lacing marijuana with fentanyl. Kids, for the few kids that are in here, tell your friends, this is your message. Any pill, drug, even marijuana that's being passed around at a party, in the halls at your schools, or wherever you're at, you have to assume that it has fentanyl in it. Even if it looks as good as those Xanax bars we showed earlier. You have to assume that has fentanyl in it. It's not worth the risk anymore. Now, everybody's asking, what are the police going to do about this? What's the school going to do about this? How are we going to protect you kids from this? And parents, take this message home to your students, and for the few of you that are in here, I'll tell you, we're going to do whatever we can, but the students, you guys really have the real power, okay? You guys can create a culture in your friends, in your sports teams, and at your schools that taking pills or any other drug is just completely unacceptable anymore. It's not a thing where we can just kind of have fun and experiment. It has to be absolutely unacceptable. YES is going to come up here in a few minutes, and they're going to give you some good tips on how you can kind of create a safe environment to help out your friends that maybe already are doing these things. But for those of you that aren't, it's not acceptable anymore. And you guys can create way more change a lot faster than I would be able to do it. I'm going to wrap up with this. We do need your help. I can't find the bad guys on my own. I have to have your information and your tips that you know about. So you can go any one of these three ways. This Captain Santabria is the captain of my unit, so you can email him directly if you have information. And you'll remain anonymous. We don't have to use your name. We don't have to say who told us, but we need your information. And if you do an online tip or call in and leave a message, please give us a way to call you back or to contact you back, because I promise you will have more information than you know, and you probably won't give me everything I need to follow up on your tip. So I'm going to need to be able to get back in touch with you, but I promise you will remain anonymous, okay? Thank you again for coming out here. This is obviously a very important topic. Thanks for taking the time.
And now we're going to have members of Youth Eastside Services, or YES, come on up. It's Christy Nicholson and Ellen Snow, who is the behavioral health specialist here.
Good evening. First, I have to figure out how to work this better. I'm very talented at that. There we go. I'm Christy Nicholson, and I supervise a team of behavioral health sports specialists who work in the Bellevue School District. We have folks working 16 hours at each of the large high schools, one person who's divided across the middle schools, and we also provide 4 hours at each of the choice schools. And the folks who are there, Ellen No being one of them, and you're going to hear from her in a moment. She's based here at Bellevue High School, it's one of her schools. They are trained in mental health counseling as well as substance use disorders. And the reason why we are approaching this way is that we all know that, people are people. We don't divide out our problems and our issues. Oftentimes they come commingled. And one of the ways that I kind of get at that is, if I asked a show of hands of people in the room, so we have mostly adults, but we do have some young people here. How many people in here have felt a little bit stressed at any time in this past week? Right? Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that we really all operate mostly the same. We're all human beings. Those of us in the room, many of us are parents. Young people, they react in the same ways that we do to stress and to pressure and to kind of wanting to feel balanced and wanting to feel normal. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. But I want you to be thinking about that in terms of, okay, we're all kind of on the same page with this. And while it's very frightening what we just heard from the police officer, I'm going to invite you, especially the parents, to get into kind of your sort of safe home zone as much as possible while recognizing how difficult that is. I'm going to hand the mic over to Ellen so she can tell you a little bit about what the behavioral health specialists do with young people in the schools. I know we're going to be passing that back and forth as we kind of talk through this subject.
Hi, my name is Ellen No. I'm the behavioral health specialist here at Bellevue High School. Some of the things I do here is Self-referral, here's parent or school staff can refer over to YES to us. I do assessments and screenings, disciplinary and voluntary. We do short-term counseling, goal-focused, using evidence-based practice, increasing skills for the students. Referrals, and we also provide education and prevention presentations to the classrooms if needed.
And so some of the signs that you might see, you want to go ahead and
Sure.
talk some more about this?
And some of the signs that we see in school, some of the physical signs are, you will see the students talk about changing in eating habits. They will express they have poor memory. If you look at them, sometimes they have red, watery eyes. Sometimes they'll sit at you and have a blank stare. And so those are kind of some signs, physical signs we see. Some of the behavioral signs.
Oh, sorry.
Would
Maybe
be,
nope, they disappeared.
some of the behavioral signs you see is okay. It's kids. They used to like to be in the clubs or activities. They don't want to join the sport clubs anymore. They don't want to hang out with that same group of friends. They want to hang out with different kind of group of friends. They are not motivated to get up to go to school. Their motivation used to be every day excited to go to school, and now they really lack, getting up in the morning.
So would you say it was changes, watching for changes in behaviors
Yeah,
from what the norm is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the norm.
Yeah.
Skipping schools. We hear that a lot. They want to skip school. They don't want to be in class. Yeah, I think some of those there.
You want to switch out the mic?
You know, if you want the other mic, then you can each have one. Push the red button at the bottom.
Yeah.
No, I'm not turning it on. I told you I wasn't any good with this. Okay. Well, she sees that she can get that to work. We'll kind of move on here. So if you heard Ellen, she's talking partly about developing skills. So really identifying with students, kind of what's going on, where are you struggling, where can we help you to kind of be more sort of competent, feeling good, successful kind of in your day-to-day functioning. So that's really kind of the focus that we're looking at. And when we're thinking about substance use, and this is kind of going back when I asked if you were stressed, well, sometimes when adults are stressed, they have a cocktail. Now, we all try to really practice healthy behaviors if we're stressed. Go for a walk, play with the dog, go swimming, play card games. We're really no different from young people, and those are really important things to be modeling for your children and inviting them to do along with you from young all the way on up, and creating those opportunities for shared time together. Because really, if we think about it, it's not some other child who is getting into trouble with substances. It is our children. I'm the parent of a 23-year-old. I've kind of sweated through a lot of what parents in here are sweating through. And that's with a relatively, on track young lady. So really, young people don't turn to substances for really strange reasons. It's pretty straightforward. Young people are primed for new experiences. Their brain tells them, I want to learn. I want new experiences. So that's a very normal thing, but as you heard from Detective Jim, that is currently a really dangerous thing because that relatively benign impulse can lead to deadly consequences. So scare tactics generally don't work, but this is why I am glad that there are some young people in here, because this is not about trying to sort of scare people to overcompensate, or, well, if I get you freaked out enough, you'll never do something. When really probably it wasn't going to be that bad in the first place. This is trying to educate people about a very real risk. So, but that's a normal impulse to try to experiment, to do new things. So as parents, I want you taking that deep breath and going, ooh, in my head, really, really scary, really want to do something that scares the heck out of them so they never ever do this. But if I kind of go down that path, I'm just going to get tuned out. And I had to learn kind of in my own parenting that less is more. And less is more. Listen and listen and listen. And then maybe state your concern, set your guidelines, set your expectation. Other reasons to be using, like we talked about before, to feel better. Young people are living in kind of a pressure cooker society right now, as we all are. There's a lot of tension, there's a lot of conflict. They're impacted by this world. They haven't been around as long as we have to kind of have figured out kind of ways and strategies to cope. So again, this is another opening for you to both kind of listen, recognize what's going on with them, empathize, validate, realize that it's not that different than you. And you are all experts on your children. I'm not up here telling you, what to do. I'm hoping to really give you some encouragement and the permission to kind of take a deep breath, realize that you kind of have that level of fear, set it aside, and then listen to your kids, have that conversation, kind of go, oh, this is kind of normative stuff. Or, oh, these are problems that everybody has. Everybody wants to feel okay and feel balanced, and will find ways to do that. And if they don't have another alternative, they will use substances to do that. Social pressure, I think it's not so much as kind of that, like people telling you, you have to do this, or you're not cool. Sometimes it's a little bit of that, but oftentimes it's really about wanting to feel a part of something, wanting to feel connected. So just being aware of that, and then where are the other opportunities for kids to feel connected? How can you help that? How can you work with the school? How can you work with the community around that? We all want that for our kids, for them to feel safely connected and to feel like they belong, have meaning and purpose, without having to be using substances and taking risks with their lives. Ellen had talked a little bit about this, about the change of who you're hanging out with. Different environments bring different risks. So being aware of that as a parent is another important part. And one thing about addiction and physical dependence, so opioids are very addictive drugs. And so we do worry about that. That is one of the reasons why I say don't use opioids, because they're very addictive. And it doesn't matter if you're taking the pills, or you're crushing up and snorting them, if you're an IV drug user, if you're smoking it, any of those routes can quickly lead to addiction. The other side of that is that they can rapidly, and even the very first time, lead to a fatal overdose. But if you have a young person who is physically addicted to substances, they are going to get sick if they don't have that substance. And their brain and their body is going to scream at them to get more of that substance. And if they don't have that safe relationship, if they don't know what there are adults at home, in their community, at school, that they could come to and they could say, I have a problem, and know that they could get help without judgment and without punishment, they're going to keep that to themselves, and they're going to take the risk, and they're going to take that pill. So some of these points I've already made in terms of as parents. So when I say stay calm, I know it's not easy to do, but it's definitely a very important thing. And then that part about listening, not talking. It doesn't mean that you don't say, hey, there are expectations in the family. We have, guidelines, rules, and we have consequences if you step outside the lines. And there are reasons for those. I don't want you to be using substances at your age. Even, marijuana. Okay, we didn't used to have to deal with the fact that marijuana might be laced with fentanyl. That's a new kind of risk. But we have been saying for years that there are a lot of other kinds of health risks and brain risks for young people using marijuana. So we want you to be knowledgeable about that. We want you to be saying that clearly to your children, communicating that. You're the parents. You have the right to say that. You have the right to set limits. Young people want to experiment and push against them. You need to have them. Just looking here to see if there's anything I haven't addressed that I really want kind of to be sure that I encourage you in doing, and that you think about. And again, I'm going back again to that most important thing being taking a deep breath and calming yourself. Is you could probably think that if somebody is really, really distraught or really angry because they're afraid, and they come at you like a bulldozer, you're going to be like, oh, I'm either backing out of here, or I'm going to fight back, I'm going to shut down. But what we're not going to have is an open, honest conversation that leads to you being able to communicate clearly your concerns and follow up on them, or your child to communicate to you what's really going on with them and around them. Ellen's going to talk a little bit about young people and helping their friends.
So I see a lot of students come to me and, you know, if they're worried about their friends feeling anxious or depressed, they will refer their friend to me or to an adult to talk to. I tell them, I encourage them the same thing with drugs. If they see their friends vaping, they see marijuana in the school, they don't know what it is. I encourage them to maybe find a quiet place to talk to their friend, you know, and also tell him or her that they're worried about the drug they're using. Also point out ways in which the friend can change, but don't, maybe just go and talk to the friend, you know. I think that's really important. But do it in a very supportive, caring, and non-judgmental way. And also, I think as a friend, be the one listening to when you offer the help, see how that friend responds. And don't just give up on them that first time. Keep encouraging them to talk to them. And keep encouraging them to, you know, talk to their teacher or any admin or any adult person they trust. You know, I think that's really important because a lot of students we see here, sometimes they say they're afraid to talk to their parents. They have a lot of fear, or they're afraid to talk to police officers. And I encourage them that they're here to help. We're here to help the students, and just to like, whether it's their friends or sometimes it could be them, but they can say my friend's using drugs. So I think it's really important that they know that the services are here, and that it's really important they have connection. Because a lot of students I see that kind of get into the curiosity of drugs, or they don't have a connection. So it's really important that they feel trusted and connected to someone.
I just want to piggyback on that really quickly. YES got started sort of increasing the hours that the behavioral health support specialists had in the schools in partnership really for two reasons. One came out of conversations that were had kind of social cafes with parents, where parents really wanted there to be safe, informed adults whose job really was at the school to be there to listen to their kids, for their kids to come to where they knew there wasn't going to be judgment, and what the impulse was going to be was, how can we bring a community around you, get your family involved, and get you the help that you need, and have you develop the skills that you need. And the other was to have a better way of responding to substance abuse or vaping infractions, where you're getting in trouble. Well, not having it just be that you're getting in trouble, but how does that loop you back to the education efforts that we heard about earlier? How can we look at what's going on? So in terms of kind of what's the reasons underlying the use? What do we need to address so that you don't go farther down this path into trouble, or that you avoid getting into trouble altogether, or you get the help that you need? So one of the things that out in the community I think is really important to know, this is kind of like the availability of Narcan, is that Washington State passed a law some years back that allowed for, if somebody's having an overdose, say you're at a party, you're with a friend, rather than, as used to happen sometimes, people being frightened and they think they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get arrested for one of those laws that were up here on the board before, that they run or they don't get the help that they needed. And this law specifically says, if you call 911 to get help for someone who's having an overdose and identify yourself as the person who is called, neither you nor the person who's having the overdose is going to be charged with a crime. Very important piece of this arsenal of addressing what's been called the opioid epidemic nationally. Some resources for you. We did bring some handouts, and these resources are repeated on those that are outside the door in the hallway. We didn't hear this at Skyline. Encourage you to do kind of as much research as you can, because the more that you know, okay, education, information, your anxiety is going up, right? Okay, good. I want you to know it, and then take that deep breath. What do you need to do? Talk to your partner, talk to your friends, talk to other parents. Bring that anxiety down, figure out what's the best way I can talk with my kid. Are they one of the ones just likes to kind of hang out and maybe get 5 words in, or are they kind of chatty? Is it in the car, sitting next to each other as we're kind of driving along? I'm kind of listening to what's the conversation in the back seat, and then maybe I pop in with a question, or an observation, or just a validation. So information, calming, action, you know, it could go back and forth like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to hear from some parents who have been affected by overdose personally in their lives. Go ahead and introduce yourself there. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Aaron Trencher. My kid goes to Skyline. I know that's a bad word here. But he was best friends with Lucas, who, how many of you have heard about Lucas's story on the news and such? So I was asked to come today from Olga just to kind of share a little bit about Lucas and about kind of what's happening up on the plateau and things that we've done up there. My son's 16, just started driving. I don't know how many people in here have kids that age. Just started getting some of that freedom. Lucas was the same way. And they've been best friends for years. And Lucas, I got to know Lucas very, very well. Had him over for dinner, went to dinner, played Xbox with him. He was a normal kid. I'm seeing some of the kids in this room here today. And if Lucas was sitting here, you wouldn't think anything different. He wasn't a strung out drug addict sitting on the streets. He got a 35 out of 36 the first time he took the ACT. Very first time. He was brilliant. We'd have conversations in my kitchen about politics. We'd have conversations in my kitchen. He'd help tutor my daughter in math. I couldn't even help my daughter, and he's tutoring my daughter in math when he's 16 years old. He was incredible. He was not the kid that you would look at and go, ooh, I don't want my kid hanging around with him. You would never even think twice. You'd want your kid hanging around with him. So he just got a bad pill. He got bad luck. He was hurting, he had back pain, and he chose to self-medicate. And it cost him his life. And you heard here today some of the things that have been going on and some of the epidemics that we have and some of the things that you should be worried about. And you should be worried about him. Lucas there's no reason he shouldn't be here today. In fact, I sat through many memorials during that first week after he died. I went to every single one of them with my son. My son got up and spoke at his funeral. He spoke at the memorials. All the other kids bawling his eyes out. Lucas would be pretty upset to find out that he died. He would be pretty ticked off right now to find out that he's not here anymore because this wasn't his intention. And I say that because when I look around at the people in this room, you have kids just like I do. You want to trust your kids. You feel like you know your kids. You feel like you know what's going on in their life. You feel like you get it. You warn them about things. You tell them not to do stuff. But they're kids. I was 16 once too. I did stupid things too. But those stupid things couldn't kill me. Certainly not accidentally. And I would just encourage each and every one of you to kind of take another look at your kids and make sure that you're an integral part of their lives. And think about Lucas and think about the fact that he'd want to be sitting right here with you right now. Wasn't his intention. He was an incredible young man. And it's an incredible loss to our community, to our world, that he's not here anymore. He was that brilliant. He was that impactful. The memorial sessions we went to, we heard stories from kids and parents. And he was a huge part of my life. I knew him for a couple of years. He was like another son to me. And I had no idea the impact he had on his friends. None. He was well-loved, well-liked, incredibly funny. You'd have no idea. So these things that you hear and these ways to connect with your kids and these people that are getting up on stage, and you're going to hear from Olga next, really take them to heart and really try to connect with your kids. I've spent the last 3 weeks since Lucas's death really connecting with my son in a way that I've never connected before. And had very serious, open conversations with him. Love and compassion is the rule of the day, not anger. You were right on. I mean, I can speak from experience. I'm not a professional, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a police officer, I don't work for the school district. I'm a dad, just like the other dads out here. That's all I am. I didn't even know I was going to speak today. I showed up to support Olga, and she asked me to speak. I didn't even know what to say. So, but all I can tell you is use that advice that you're hearing today, because it's real and it works. I spent 15 years telling my kids, stop, don't do this, don't do that, getting angry, yelling at them. I'm a dad, I didn't know what else to do. I'm like, how could they not know this stuff? It just makes sense. The minute Lucas passed away, I changed my tune, and the whole world has changed for me and my son and my daughters. And I can just tell you that, take that approach. It's taken everything I can not to cry. I don't know if you can tell that. But I spent 2.5 weeks bawling my eyes out because I don't see Lucas anymore. I see his picture, but I don't see him. But I do thank him for his final gift, which is the lessons he's taught my kids and my children. And hopefully he can teach you, because that's what we have to take away from this. And please listen to what these people are telling you up on the stage, because it is all real. And what you think you know and how you think you're handling things might be right. It's your family. I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you that I took a very different approach 3 weeks ago, and it has changed my world. And it can change yours too. So please keep Lucas in mind. And kind of what happened to him was not on purpose. He wasn't a strung out addict. He was just a kid trying to get along, just like all of our kids are. So thank you for your time. I'll let Olga come up now, but I really appreciate it. You're welcome, sweetie. Absolutely.
I'd like to welcome up Olga Davidoff.
Yes,
Thank you, Olga.
thank you. Thank you, my dear friends. Today is a very special day. Today is exactly 1 month since my son is gone. I have 2 sons. I have a 19-year-old who is in college. He's sophomore. And I have a 16-year-old who is in heaven. And thank you, Darren, for talking about Lucas. If I told you how great my son is, it would be biased, because I'm a mother, and for every mother, their son is the best. But I have to tell you that drug can creep into your house very slowly and very subtle. And based on my knowledge today, and I also, like Darren, I'm going to every session. And I sometimes wonder, why do I go? I don't have son anymore, so why do I need to know about drugs? But I just remind myself, well, first of all, I have a 19-year-old, and a lot of drugs are happening in college. And a lot of overdoses are happening in college, and actually after kids finish college, they face real life and they face real challenge. And the other day I sat with my 19-year-old Nicola, and I said, Nicola, do you know how drugs affect brain? What exactly happens to the brain? And honestly, my son did not know much about it. I did not know anything about it. And my stance was, like Darren was saying, I know the drugs are bad. I just said that, don't do drugs. Drugs are horrible. You see people on the street, you see homeless people on the street, and they never planned to be homeless. They were all normal people. But I think, then I went online and I started searching how to prevent kids from experimenting with drugs. And some of the very good advices I found from actually drug addicts. And they said, when you say no to drugs, it just simply doesn't work. Because kids challenge no, they challenge every single no. And they would say that, well, you said you think, I understand your point, drugs are not good, you're right, but I know how to do drugs, I know how to. I know my friend, and I know that it's legit, and I know how to do it, therefore, I'm not doing it the way you would do it. I know how to do it. So, but do they know what percentage of people gets addicted? Do they know actually what happens to the brain? I don't think they do. And I didn't know, and so when I asked my 19-year-old Nicola, and I said, Nicola, why don't you learn that stuff? He said, why do I need to learn? I'm not planning to use drugs. I'm far away from drugs. And I said, well, but how can you help someone if you don't know that? that we didn't know that, and we couldn't help Lucas. If we knew, we could explain him, maybe he would have more power to make decisions. The thing when we say don't do drugs and we talk about homeless people, that's good. But we don't know what other information gets to our kids. Our kids are exposed to tons of media that we don't have access to just because we don't check phones. We don't know what they do on social media. And in a lot of cases, they see clear advertisement of drugs. They see it through music. When you just wake up and you get high, they hear totally different messages. And they do not see homeless. They see people who are cool. They see people who are wealthy. They have good lifestyle, and they think and they do drugs. So, and that messages might be more powerful than what we tell them. So unless they know and absolutely certain, and they know that, well, this drug actually does make you feel good, but it makes you feel good because the drug attaches to your brain neurons. So actually you do feel good, but you get addicted. The other drug is, yes, it is true, it makes you relaxed because it just sits on your brain and it makes you addicted. So if they know that information, then maybe when somebody come to them and say, hey, why don't you have drug to feel cool, then you know what this coolness means to you. Maybe you will not be experimenting as much. So I just encourage you to learn about drugs. For me, learning about drugs was a waste of my time because I was like my older son and saying, it's a waste of my time. I already know that it's no. But to talk to kids, we probably need to make them say no. So ask them questions, ask them to do research, ask them so they will tell you on these facts, and then they should say no, not us saying them no. Another piece of advice, I just wanted you to go home with all this information that you had here, and just be more knowledgeable than me, and be more empowered, and prevent anything happens to your children. Go through their phones, go through their know their media accounts. It will give you a very good idea what is going on. Don't be afraid. I was afraid to violate my son's privacy because I trusted him, and I should be going through his phone. I should be going through his media. But again, you are in better position now because you still have time. Your kid is alive and you can save them. And then another thing that I would say, definitely make a connection group. I spoke a lot to Darren, and it would be just simply calling him and saying, hey, that's what I observe. How do you handle it? Do you observe the same thing? But just don't just hang up on one parent. Have more parents involved. Every single friend who is friend of your child, you should really know that friend, their family, and understand what's going on in the network. And you know, no matter how hard it is, you do have picture of your child that, God forbid I found something. And if you don't expect to find something, actually you will never find. And even all these symptoms, they are very, very, it's difficult for you to even point it to drugs. If you're certain that your child is not using drug, all these symptoms about sleepiness, well, he's tired from homework. Irritated, well, of course, he is teenager. So all these signs, if you say that, no, my son is not using drugs, you will not notice them because they are very much related to anything. If you do look for drugs, you will notice it faster. You will have time to react. And even when you search the room, if you don't know if you just don't want to find it, you will not find it. Your brain will connect it totally different way and point it to totally different stuff. So, you know, we just need to acknowledge that that drugs are happening to good people. They're happening to good students. They're happening to good athletes. They would happen to, and they might happen to any of us. It's just some people, actually, some people could get lucky, and some people could be just unlucky. Some people can make wrong decisions. Some people could be just in the wrong place and at the wrong time. So just be open-minded and talk to your student, listen, and just do your homework. And I just hope that Lucas's death will bring more openness to us, and we will not be afraid to start sharing information. Yes, our children are not behaving well. It's okay. If you cannot share it within one circle of groups, then share it with another. It will be beneficial. If you don't open up, then your friend will not open up either. And we all dealing in isolation. And drug is not a new problem. It has been here for so long, but somehow we still feel it is not going to happen to me. So let's just get connected, and let's just keep talking and save our children.
I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. I'd like to invite, I think that's where we are in our set. I'd like to invite the members of the panel back. Christine, you're here to come on up, and then Christine Allen, if you'd like to come on up as well. This microphone. And I'll go ahead and repeat the questions out loud so everybody can hear them. Oh, and we've got Deborah back here, Director of Council. Thanks, Deb. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you taking the fairly proactive step of reaching out to the communities here at Bellevue and also in the plateau. And thank you for Olga, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Your name's Darren.
Darren, thank you so much also for coming. I was just curious to what extent you're comfortable sharing kind of how Lucas got the pills, how he, I mean, I don't know the answer, so I don't really know how to phrase this, but walk us through how a kid who's got some pain or back problems based on high school sports goes out into the public and finds these pills and ingests them, like, and Officer King also, you know, like, where are these kids getting these pills? Are they getting them on the street? Are they getting them from friends? Where's the point of access? And how can we kind of help our kids understand that there's, you know, legal ways to address pain and discomfort? Thank you so much.
So the question was, how are students getting access to these fentanyl-laced drugs?
I can speak just from what I know by talking to children. So I understand that first of all, probably before fentanyl, at least from my experience, Lucas, I found out that Lucas was using marijuana. So I just walked into the room and I smelled marijuana. And it was my big concern. I talked to Lucas about it. I tested Lucas. He got positive on marijuana, of course. We got the whole test. Then we repeated other tests on marijuana, and he was positive since then on. We did not test him on other drugs because I thought that it is impossible. So my big mistake. Another thing of closures that I had from test is I know that Lucas was a big friend with Cameron, and then Darren told me that, you know, we test Cameron all the time and Cameron is clean. So I was, you know, I knew that, well, if Cameron is clean and Lucas is with Cameron, so I don't need to go the whole big thing and test him. Signs were that Lucas would use other pills. I don't think that Lucas used other pills maybe until very recent, before he died. My understanding is that kids just at the party, they just, somebody brings drugs like alcohol, and then they just, for free, pass it around. My older son, so again, that's not something that Lucas told me because we didn't get to that conversation. I I found out that he was using pill after his death. I asked Nicola, my older son, I asked him, did somebody offer you marijuana? He said, yes, at UW. And I said how my temperature right away rose up, and I thought, why? I mean, I just told myself that it is like, normal and common, but when you hear it about your kid, you all of a sudden start being so nervous. And I asked him, how was that going? He said, it was just a party and people were just passing a bin to smoke. So my understanding is like, first time everyone, and then yes, and I ask also some of the friends, and I ask how that happens. Typical scenario, older kid introduces them in school at some kind of party or an event, just giving it for free. Just try it. We use it, and it will happen a couple of times, just for free. It's like. To me, it sounded like, when I was in school and we were trying smoking cigarettes, that's how it was as well. Somebody would bring, you try it. And then, you try it a couple of times, and free is finished, then you need to buy. I guess that's how it goes. Somebody can share something else.
I think we can add up here. I'm going to hand this to put that to the detective. So there are people who make money off of illegal substances and selling them. So Detective had mentioned drug cartels. So there's this kind of high level of that. And then they look for ways to get that into the economy. So it may be that a friend is giving something, and sometimes it used to be somebody's own prescription medications or something they got out of the medicine cabinet, but more and more with the access to the illegal fentanyl and the production really scaling up, it's kind of moved out of that into this more illegal products. So there are drug dealers, and they give them to a friend. And I'm going to let the detective talk more about that.
There's two ways that fentanyl is coming into our country right now, and unfortunately, one of the ways is incredibly easy. You can go on the dark web, and you can order fentanyl and have it mailed directly to your house, right through the postal service. It's very scary. And then, of course, the cartels are bringing it into our country. When it used to be in the 80s, the big cocaine labs, now they're big fentanyl labs. And they're producing it on mass scales, producing the commercial grade pills, and and shipping them into our country. And so, as she already alluded from there, it just kind of starts from the top and it filters out, where the big guys sell thousands and thousands and thousands of pills to a few people, and they just start parceling them out. And they end up in people's hands a lot of times not even knowing what they are. And that's what's really scary. And I mean, drug dealers obviously are already pretty bad people, but what's kind of really dirty now is that they're selling people cocaine and not telling them it's got fentanyl in it. Or they're selling them oxy pills, saying these are legit pills from a prescription, and they're faking got fentanyl in it. So a lot of times people don't even know what they're getting anymore.
How expensive? So how hard or how easy the kids can buy that?
So the question is, how expensive are these drugs?
Very cheap. Xanax bar you can get anywhere from $7 to $15 to $20, depending on the potency or kind of how good the dealer stuff is. So an oxy pill, $20, $25, very cheap.
In the back.
Are these pills that are called as Oxy or Xanax, do they also have Oxy or Xanax in them and they're being mixed with fentanyl? And if that's the case, what is the benefit to the seller, the person who's making it, to add fentanyl to it when those drugs in and of themselves are already addictive?
So the question is, do the fake pills have the other medication in it? So does a Xanax bar that is laced with fentanyl have Xanax in it? And what is the upside of lacing things with fentanyl?
No. The fake pills do not have the real drugs in them. They're just all what we call binder. So it's a bunch of innocuous material that doesn't do anything, and then a little bit of fentanyl that they mix into them. The benefit of fentanyl is just how highly addictive it is. So a lot of people say, well, why would you put fentanyl in something like meth? Because your body reacts completely different to meth than it does with fentanyl. And it's just for the addictive property. It makes people want that drug even more, and so of course they're going to sell more and make more money off of it.
At the back?
Question, if a student finds a weapon at their parents' house and brings it, and kids fool around with it, and the student gets shot, is there anything like that if they find drugs in their parents' medicine cabinet, bring that and they fool around and then students die from that experience? Is there any correlation or relation to the laws around those experiences?
You mean like holding the parents responsible? Holding the parents responsible?
Yeah, are the kids responsible? Like, what are the lines of responsibility for like the parents, the kids who brought it, and then if a child is killed from the experience?
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're talking about a prescription pill that a kid took out of their parents' cabinet and brought to school, you know, as far as I know, there's no laws that would be holding the parents responsible for that. But yeah, the children would fall under the same laws that I brought up before, dispensing, even if it's a prescription drug, if you're handing that out or selling that to people that don't have a prescription for it, people whose name's not on that bottle, then that's a Class B felony, and the kid could be charged with that.
Down here?
Yeah, question for the detective. If I heard you correctly, you said that there was 2 opiate overdoses this past weekend?
Yeah,
and
correct.
The second question is, can you explain more about the BDIs, the pinpoint eyes, and whether that's related to CBD or opiates or whatever?
Sure, yeah, there were 2 cases this week. Sorry, this mic's cutting in and out. There were 2 cases this week that our patrol officers handled. They were adults, they weren't kids. And they were non-fatal. They were able to survive because they got medics there quick enough to save them. But in both cases I pointed out before, they were the blue M30 pills that I showed up on the screen were at both scenes, from what I've been told. And I'm sorry, what was your second part of the question? Oh, the pinpoint eyes. Yeah, so yes, that's a very real thing for anybody that's on opioids. I've seen it a million times on the street. Their pupils will be incredibly small, and they do what we call go on the nod, where you'll be talking to them and they just slowly start slurring their speech and go off and fall asleep like that right in front of you. And you can kind of shake them awake and say, hey man, and then they'll talk to you again for a few more seconds and then they'll just slowly go back to sleep.
And is there any relationship between pinpoint pupils and marijuana? CBD oil?
CBD oil, you know, I'm not an expert on CBD oil, so I don't know if there's no THC in it, which a lot of CBD oil doesn't have THC in it, then no, there wouldn't be any correlation there. Something that I just learned about CBD oil, though, is that if you go to like Rite Aid or some of those places that sell CBD oil, and it'll say 0% THC on it, that stuff is not regulated. It comes from not inside our country a lot of times, and it can have as much as 6% THC in it, even though it says 0 on it.
Yeah, right here at the Bellevue shirt on.
So I find that sometimes information sharing is very useful, very helpful to learn so much. So I wonder if there are any more kind of information sharing sessions coming in the future, or this is the last one?
Yeah, the question is will we be having more information sharing sessions? We don't have any planned right now, but I've been getting a lot of questions about that, so I'm definitely going to go back to our team and see if we can put something else together to continue this conversation. And just a second, did you have a question, sir?
It's probably variable, but I'm curious, like when you find someone who's overdosed, is there like an average time for giving them narcan or whatever for being able to help them survive a situation? Or it's just very...
The question was, if a person is overdosing, is there a certain amount of time that you have to deliver Narcan to them to make it survivable? Is that?
Yeah.
You know, I wish there was a fire guy here to maybe give you more accurate information. I would say, as you've already mentioned, it's very variable how much they've taken. People can also build up a tolerance to fentanyl. I've sat across the table from a couple people that have told me that heroin doesn't even do anything for them anymore, that they have to have fentanyl. So it is very variable on what time. I've also sat across from a guy that says that that told me he's OD'd 10 times. The only reason that he's alive is because his girlfriend carried Narcan in her purse. And he said this, he told me that it's immediate when he would get, he would buy heroin is what his thing was, and then if he would get bad heroin that had fentanyl in it that he didn't know about, as soon as he hit that heroin, he knew that it had fentanyl in it, and he would OD almost immediately. It was very powerful. So it's not a lot of time, pretty quick before you got to get a narcan.
Question down here, yes.
Yes. Kids are handing out edibles, marijuana edibles, and a lot of them don't know what marijuana edibles do. So I was really hoping that there would be more education about marijuana edibles, because they come in all forms and they're easily handed out, and there's no regulations about what are going in edibles.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good topic for maybe another information session. We were really focusing on fentanyl tonight because of the overdose deaths that have been happening, but I'll definitely take that back to the team, and we'll see if we can have a conversation about that. One back here and then down here. Go ahead.
You mentioned the sports. I guess maybe it was a little bit, but I was wondering if there is any correlation or data about sports and pain in sports that leading to like simple pills, like over-the-counter stuff, and leading to more powerful drugs.
So the question is there a connection between students playing sports, becoming injured, and then leading to any sort of adverse addiction or outcomes?
I don't want to say that if you participate in a sport and you got hurt, maybe you tore your ACL or you injured some muscle or you injured your back. In a couple cases, they have been athletes and they have had prescription medications which ran out and weren't refilled, and the kids found an alternate source. My boss goes to a sort of a meeting of all of the districts and King County Health Department, and she was telling me this morning that we have had 8 fentanyl deaths so far this school year. That's 8 too many for me.
You have a question, Deb?
Wait, sorry.
Here, in King County. In King County. They, in King County.
8 students?
Was it 8 students, Deb?
8 young people.
8 young people. We'd have to look up the statistics on that.
It could be under 21.
The school year just started.
Yeah.
Too much.
Right, and that is why the focus tonight really was on the fentanyl and on the counterfeit drugs and getting people educated about that. So with the hope that everyone that is here, and most particularly young people here, but everybody goes out and shares this kind of alert, because this is a newer situation. This has not been part of kind of that ongoing education necessarily around substance abuse and the dangers of, because I quite agree that there are plenty of harmful impacts and reasons why young people shouldn't be using cannabis, marijuana, as well, and those are definitely things worth talking about. And I would say that through the health classes and then through the behavioral health support specialists, that people are making a lot of efforts through that to disseminate that information, right? So to get that factual information out for people.
I can only take 2 more questions. I'm going to take this lady down here and then the one in the back corner.
Okay, I want to know, does the school have narcan?
The question was, does the school have Narcan? We don't have it right now, but we're putting policy in place. We'll have it by January. I don't know if the SROs are able to carry it yet, but I know that that's in the works. I have some that I carry, but I'm not at all the schools. But we are working on that to make sure we can get some in place very soon. Question in the back.
They mentioned parties. So where are these parties held, and who organizes them, and who hosts them? And
Can I speak to that?
I seem to remember parents buying, oh goodness, alcohol for parties. And how is that kind of monitored, or do you just pay attention to the rumor mill, or?
Yeah. So the question is where are these parties happening where the pills are passed around, and who? Who's kind of in control of the locations. Darren here is asked to speak to that one.
So obviously we've been dealing with this up on the plateau, and one of the things that I'm noticing we had this at Skyline a couple of weeks ago, and there was a really big audience there, obviously because of the 2 deaths that we had. To answer your question, the thing that I would recommend is the parties happen anywhere. right? They happen at somebody's house, right? Parents could be home. That's mainly where we're finding that these parties happen, at people's homes, right? And sometimes the parents are home, and they don't realize that these things are going on because, as you've heard, these things are small. They can be taken in a corner. They can be taken outside. It's not like there's this huge table lined up with all the drugs and like, come and check it out, right? That's not really what goes on, right? So one of the things that we're doing up on the plateau to kind of combat this is, I don't know anybody in here. I knew a lot of people in the Skylight audience, but I don't know anybody in here. I'm not sure how many of you know each other. And I can tell you in the Skylight audience, a lot of people knew each other by sight, but certainly didn't make phone calls, certainly didn't understand that their kids were hanging out with our kids and at this house and at that house. And I can tell you that is the number one way to learn and to get educated, is to connect with the people in this room and to understand. You heard Olga say it, and it couldn't be more true. And we are working really hard on the plateau to connect our families together. We have phone numbers and text numbers, and we're on emails together. And when my kid goes to someone's house, I'm like, hey, are you home? Yeah, I'm home. Okay, cool. You know, and when my kid goes, hey, we want to go to this person's house, I don't know that person. I text 6 parents. I literally text 6 parents. Do you know this kid? And they come back, yeah, good kid. Okay, or not sure. Okay, guess what? You can't go. And you know what my kid does right now? He goes, okay. A month ago, he'd have been like, come on. No, come on, don't you trust me? How many parents have had their kids say, don't you trust me?
Yeah.
Every single one of them, even the kids are laughing. Okay? They're 16 or 14 or 17. Don't trust them. I love them, but don't trust them. I just asked them to do it.
Is it something you can buy?
Yeah, I got it off a place called Amazon.com, if you've heard of it. Yeah, there's separate fentanyl tests too. Yeah, my kid was all about it. I'm like, you're 16, I want to make sure you're safe. He's like, all right. And he's well known, he's a popular kid. You know, sure, no problem. Don't you trust me? I'm like, yeah, but still pee in the cup. And he's like, okay, and he's clean. So, but again, these are things that you just got to do, and they're hard to do. So, but connect the families. Parties happen anywhere. So connect with each other in this room. That's how you'll know.
And speak up about that. I mean, I think it's fine to say to other parents, I don't want you to provide alcohol or, you know, a place for drinking and using substances. Sometimes parents think they're doing a good thing by having a safe space for that, but it's really much more powerful to say, you know, no, this behavior isn't safe, period, and it's not okay to do that, and I don't want that happening. And I want to help facilitate other ways for you to be together and have an enjoyable time, other ways to kind of deal with your emotional, your physical pain. There are other ways to do that. And back to the drug test, so kind of taking you back to kind of like that, taking that deep breath. You know, it's like not getting in somebody's face and demanding it, but saying, hey, you know, this kind of trait, you want to be using the car, I want to be assured that, you know, there aren't substances in your system that are going to cause problems with that.
That's right.
So your choice. You use the car or not use the car. I mean, it may be a different situation like that, but keeping that as a matter of fact as possible.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know we didn't get to all the questions. Several of us will be sticking around for a little while, so if you want to come up and ask us questions one-on-one, we'd be happy to answer them. I just want to remind you that we're going to have a table outside with demos of narcan, and I'm also going to be demoing and having some samples of the substance you can mix in with your old prescription drugs so you can throw away in the trash. Thank you very much again for coming.